What's up, dudes and dudes to the internet? My name's Scyushi, and we are back again for some more Trove to Drove. And today we're going to be talking about Trove's Delve update, because I did end up having a stream talking about this, but I wanted to have this as a more introductory video. We're not going to be going into all of the patch notes of what's going to be happening with the new update or anything. I just kind of want this as a, I don't know, not necessarily a beginner's guide or anything, but just a quick introduction to let you guys know what's going on, okay? In case you don't want to watch through an hour-long stream. So basically, the test servers are available for Trove right now. What you're going to do in order to access those is on the PC version of the game. In the top right-hand corner of the glyph launcher, you'll be able to select PTS. And on the live server, before you come to the test server, you're going to type the words /export account, all one word, and thankfully it seems like they actually fixed it. The export account wasn't working for the longest time, but now it actually seems to be working. I was able to convert my most recent characters over and everything, so I'm a lot more stronger and more powerful to go into the delves and everything like that. Anyways, it might take some time to end up exporting, so if it doesn't happen right away, don't be super frustrated. Oh, perfect timing. There's one of the new mounts right there. I'm trying to get hooked up by the devs, but I haven't heard anything back yet, so I don't know if they're out of office or anything right now, just because, you know, all the stuff going on in real life, right? So anyways, once you end up going onto the test server, it's a test server. There are a lot of freaks on this that are like highly invested on the test server. I don't know why. People that have like lots of flux, and I mean, there was like flux duping at one point, and people that actually invest time in clubs and stuff. I don't know. Who cares about any of that? Okay, I'm not trying to hate on it. It just doesn't make sense to me, because this is a temporary server where back in the day you used to be able to get anything out of the store for free because it was a test server, but then because people were abusing it and having their main account on the test server, the devs ended up removing that feature. Now you can't really get anything out of the store, which, I mean, if you have it on the live server, then you can just convert your stuff over anyways. Okay, that was hashtag rant. I'm sorry, guys. Over here in the hub, we've actually got a new set of buildings right here, which is pretty cool. So this is going to end up being for Bomber Royale, as you would expect, but this is going to be for the new Delves section of the game. Now, I know that that doesn't really roll off the tongue. Hey, there's one of the air mounts right there. Nice. We get a quick little preview. That's cool. But even though Delves doesn't really roll off the tongue, it's actually a really, really cool update. I'm just hoping to see it come into fruition, because we're kind of on, you know, we're on the test server right now, so a lot of it is pretty unbalanced. I'll go in and show you guys what that's about in a moment, but I just want to run by a couple things, just because the delves are quite literally going to end up being shadow tower replacements. So let me explain this as well. It's kind of a ranty video today, guys, okay? While I gain information and get footage of all of the stuff to do with the delves, so that I can do a proper tutorial for you guys on what it all is. But anyways, Trove's lag is heavily influenced by the fact that worlds are constantly being created and randomly generated in the game. Obviously, the servers just have issues and limitations in general, but one of the biggest issues that the devs have talked about countless times is shadow towers. That's why you'll notice on Monday the servers just lag out, because as soon as you open a shadow tower, the game has to generate all 3 of the rooms and then the boss room, right? So, or is it just 3 rooms total? I don't know. Anyways, the point is that that's why the servers are essentially lagging out as much as they are. Even just on normal days, there might be a lot of high traffic for shadow towers. So the developers have been looking for a solution to end up kind of moving away from the shadow towers. And the weird thing is that this update single-handedly destroys the shadow towers, which is very, very weird. Because let me just run by a few things right here. So this shadow tower changes, and there's a huge patch notes list I can leave in the description for you guys to check out, but we'll go through it in more detail in another video. So shadow towers have had Titan Souls and Lunar Soul drops removed because they can be accessed through the delves. and I'll explain why all of it's moving to the Delves in a moment. The Shadow Tower purple name has been retired. It will likely appear in Delves later on. Binding Darkness and Starfire Dragon Egg fragments no longer drop in Shadow Towers, now occasionally drop from chests found when completing Delve floors. Starfire Dragon fragments can now be found on world bosses outside of Shadow Towers, so that at least makes it a lot easier to end up getting that dragon, potentially. Shadow Moon and Eclipse key fragments are no longer obtainable because they're actually going to end up being replaced with a new type of key. I think it's in here. Can I craft it? Yeah, here it is right here. So you'll end up getting Delve keys just from U1 and higher. So at least that makes going to the higher difficulties, like it's not like Shadow Towers where you can select 1, 2, 3 different difficulties and what have you, and all the different bosses and stuff like that. It's all just random. And again, we'll get into the Delves themselves in a bit, because in concept they're actually really, really cool, and I just hope to see them a little bit more refined, because as of right now, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself, as of right now I can confirm that they are not as efficient as just normal dungeon grinding, unfortunately. There's a couple exclusive items you get out of the Delves, but I'm really, really hoping that they end up buffing the loot so that it's actually something worth doing, like, forever. Because as of right now, it's like, outside of getting all of the new stuff from the new dungeons in the Delve or whatever, it's like, once you end up getting all of that done, there wouldn't be much reason to end up going back in there, kind of thing. And that unfortunately is a big problem with TROVE'S updates in general, is that a lot of it just kind of gets moved to the side because it's not as important once you end up getting the key items and pieces of information out of them, right? So Shadow and Moon gems will be removed from the game at some point, and same with the keys and the fragments as well. So they're going to end up letting us, when this comes to the live server, and it is available on the test server right now, you can convert any of your shadow keys and whatever to the new Delve keys. So it's a good way that we can, you know, those of us that have hundreds of shadow keys and stuff can end up just literally replacing them, because there doesn't seem to be much reason for the Shadow Towers even existing at this point, just because all the big rewards that you get out of it have been nerfed. That said, it doesn't say anything about like Shadow Tower drops. So shadow, you know, shadow cache and stuff like that, I think are still going to end up being, you know, available there. Let me actually just search shadow instead of Shadow Towers. So they also say that chests at the end of Shadow Towers no longer require a key to open. Delve chests do require a key to open. The Shadow Escalation Golden Thread is no longer available. The Giant Shadow Panda that previously came from the thread can now be crafted at the Shadowy Market, blah, 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 blah. So they are essentially changing like a lot of things with it. Delve Day is going to end up being a new thing as well. So instead of Shadow Towers, it's literally going to be replaced, and it's going to double your crystal drops, which of course you end up getting crystals from the Delves. Double Shadow Shard drops, which you get Shadow Shards from the Delve, but as far as I can tell, those are still available. Oh, I see. So it says Shadow Shards are now available from picking up crystals inside the Delves after a certain depth. So I wonder if that just straight up took all the Shadow Shards out of the Shadow Towers. I'll have to test that out, because from what I've seen, it's insanely difficult to end up getting Shadow Shards in the dungeons that I've been to, but maybe once you get to a certain depth, it becomes a lot easier. And then the Inert Geode drops. So the Inert Geode drops, I know that's like, I wish that they would pick better names for these things. Those are going to end up being a new resource that is used for anything out of this crafting table, and anything that you can buy out of here, and you know, then there's a new module as well. So I'll come back to these in a minute, because let's just hop into a portal if we can. What you'll end up doing is you'll activate this portal, and you see the green icon on top of us. That means that myself and all these other people are actually queued. So we're sitting and waiting until there's enough players, and then it's going to throw us into the world. And this essentially is taking care of that lag issue that I mentioned with constantly creating new Shadow Tower portals, because it's going to go up to an 8 people maximum. If you end up, for whatever reason, leaving this world, you can get invited back, but only if you yourself ended up participating in the queue for a public match. There's private ones as well, which I'll explain in a moment. But in the private ones, that's different. You can just invite anybody. Now, here's the thing. You cannot leave, refill your flasks and come back and stuff like that. The game will actually know and save the flasks and gear that you ended up having. It'll know the class that you ended up having. There's no way to end up kind of cheating the system and cycling off of it. But essentially you can see this is just the geode caves, but we're able to actually explore it with combat and with our mount. And if we press tab, normally we'd go into the build menu. We are now actually inside the geode caves menu, so we can use the grappling hook on any class. We're using our jet boots, and then we can end up using our, you know, the main tool, the module, or whatever it's called, right? So before we end up getting into the caves, there's a couple things I gotta show you guys. So these are going to end up being random generated buffs or debuffs to certain enemies, to the enemies. So some enemies have increased health, damage, and stability. Any of them that you see with that icon. You can see that there is icons for all of these buffs and debuffs in the top right. But good luck memorizing those. I mean, eventually we'll learn it, but who cares? And then this is a fast travel system of sorts. It's actually going to, well, like, literally it explains it. Defeat all enemies in a room to unlock transport locations on this tier. So this tier being this dungeon that we're in right now, this delve. So once the objective has been completed and we beat the boss, if we've done it fast enough, we can go deeper to the boss. I don't know where the time limit is for that, but I mean, it's still interesting. So this counts as a room, and you saw all the enemies that were in here. As we ended up defeating all of them, this glowing light appears, and this is the checkpoint system. So another thing that's really interesting is you'll notice the compass is completely different. To know who you are, you're going to end up having the biggest head, and then all of this other stuff that you see, this is literally showing how deep or how not deep you are in the dungeon. So the deepest point being the boss. This is how you can track your depth, basically, so that you don't end up accidentally going the wrong way, because you'll start seeing yourself declining backwards. And you can see all of these are going to end up being the individual rooms, and the ones that are lit up means that they've killed all of the creatures in them, and there is the fast travel point located in that room. So let's actually use the fast travel point right here. Boop. And I don't know whether or not I'm supposed to go up or down, so let's hop down and see whether or not I'm actually going deeper into the dungeon. Yeah, okay, so based on the icon, me on the radar or compass or whatever, I am actually going deeper into it. So you can see, you know, they just opened this room. Right now, bulldozers and stuff work in here, which is hilarious. I'm trying to get footage of it because I'm pretty sure it's going to end up being patched. But you can see these enemies are pretty strong. That's because we're actually in U11 right now, and you will have noticed that we are 35k PR. So without going too deep into it, the way that the delves are going to essentially work is, you know, it's room by room and it's all random generated, which is cool, right? The thing is that the difficulty seemingly is based off of the amount of power rank that you have, and near as I can tell, it might be a glitch. They've got it set up so that whatever your strongest power rank, no matter the class that you change to, you're going to that difficulty. So I have tried going on a lower PR character and going into this area, and it still throws me in U11, even though I'm not strong enough to do that on most other characters. And unfortunately, I do have to report to you guys that because of how difficult this place is later anyways, not at the beginning of the game. At the beginning of the game, this place is cakewalk, okay? You're gonna be getting tons and tons of glim. You don't really get that much in terms of items off of these enemies, which is annoying. But the fact of the matter is that you will have to be using top tier Shadow Tower classes. And you're gonna have to end up being pretty strong. Like, I'm pretty much maxed out. I like using Draco just because it's easy. He's super duper tanky, so he's got a lot of survivability, and he's got a lot of damage as well. Obviously, other characters might outshine it, like Gunslinger obviously has a lot of damage. I actually stumbled upon a really good duo combo where somebody was playing as an Ice Sage. Ice Sage is actually... Ice Sage already does really good damage for Shadow Towers in general since the rework a long time ago. But even more so than that, Ice Sage is really useful in here because you can slow down the enemies, so you can keep them away from you so that they're not just endlessly running up to you and attacking you, because you'll notice that we're not regenerating our pots. This is an endurance round of sorts. Consider it kind of like the Shadow Tower itself, but with different objectives. So you can see in the top right, our objective right now is to kill 85 more creatures. We've slowly been killing them as we entered this place. The number for that is going to end up being random, and the objectives themselves are going to be different. So there's a, activate a monolith and defeat all the enemies that are summoned by the monolith, which can be glitchy because sometimes the enemies can spawn in the walls and then you can't complete the objective and it screws you over. There's also just clearing a certain amount of rooms of enemies, and then you can end up getting to the boss. Essentially, you have to complete the main objective in order to get to the boss. And I want to also mention too briefly that if you are on the test server right now and you're finding issues with seeing your compass or seeing the objective in the top right, like I was in my stream, it's because of certain HUD mods end up influencing it, like compass mods, clock mods, and stuff like that. Certain other mods probably end up affecting it as well. Let me actually use the new module. So this is the vacuum, which literally, I mean, poor example right there because we have a revenant. It's literally just pulling all of the enemies in. It's really, really good. I don't know why some of these enemies generate items, but some of them don't, or most of them don't. There's also a debuff that's really, really annoying that enemies can do in here, where they'll actually kick you off of your mount or just make you walk super duper slow. Generally, it's kind of glitchy. That was a great example. You saw that right there where he pulled all the enemies in. That was a vacuum. That was not a class that ends up actually using a pulling in move. I mean, maybe it was. I didn't catch which class they were, but the point is that that vacuum is actually really good. It can be upgraded. But anyways, now that we've actually completed the objective, we're going to end up going to the boss room. So it's just a mad dash. The thing that's really, really nice about it is that you have to, as you can see, we have to have 2 people required in the boss room. So as soon as we get into this boss room right here, boop, everybody gets the notification and they are allowed to just instantly fast travel to the boss room. All of your flasks end up recharging, so you can just spam them like crazy. That's why the boss is getting absolutely annihilated. Probably the easiest part of the dungeon is the boss, but then most disappointingly is the rewards. So there was a chest here. It got blowed up like instantaneously, and all we ended up getting was some of the inert geode items. No drops. Sometimes you can get drops. I've gotten up to Crystal 2, I think, but for the most part, I usually just get relics and legendaries and really, really crappy items. The problem too is that sometimes you'll just get no items like you saw. Other times you'll get like maybe 1 or 2. So that's where, like I mentioned, the reward for doing this is just not good enough right now. But before we talk about that, I want to mention very quickly that you can see right here, this totem right here, this was not placed by anybody. This is showing the boss that you are about to fight. And since we ended up completing it fast enough, we can actually open this next portal. And you can see that the depth is going to 135. So the depth is going to count higher and higher and higher. As far as I know, it's going to probably end up being infinite. But the reason why this gets rid of that shadow tower lag we mentioned is because no loading screens. We're in the same instance, and again, we could leave and get re-invited and just keep coming back and stuff. So now we have to actually activate 4 monoliths, which we won't do that right now. The monoliths are actually kind of tricky to end up doing, but I do want to just kind of go back to the HUD area just so I can mention a couple more things about the module itself. Again, you know, even though this is kind of an introduction to Delves, I'm not considering this like a beginner's guide, just because there is a lot more to the Delves than just that. Like, in order to end up getting to the Shadow Tower bosses, it works kind of the same as Shadow Towers did, where every 3rd floor you're going to end up fighting a special boss, and that's where you'll end up having a special chest generate, and then you can open it with the new key item, right? So anyways, as you're getting that inert item, there's also going to end up being new resources. Like, this is a free range food resource, right? This one, near as I can tell, just grows in the Delves based on the level. I don't know what depth you need to be at in order for these to show up. But I noticed when I was grinding these, Merc ended up having a whole bunch of them. I had barely any of them. And that was because when he was using the vacuum like a crazy person, it actually pulls in all of the plants. So you get all those resources. I wasn't using the plants or the vacuum so much, so I didn't get to actually end up having as many resources. But let's talk about the module itself. So it's going to be right here. Fairly easy to craft. You're going to have to go through quite a few delves in order to get enough inert geode. Now, the inert geode kind of actually operate the same as rupees do in Zelda, which I kind of like, where you have a limited amount of them that you can end up storing, and you'll have to buy a wallet in order to end up increasing that amount. So we'll talk about these in a moment, because I just want to mention the module Forge itself. You can see that in order to upgrade this, It's just going to cost Geode Cave resources, which there's nothing on the market right now because we're on the test server. Otherwise, on the live server, I would obviously be able to buy the resources that I'm lacking. But higher levels of this are going to increase the radius. Crystal Vacuum refunds half of the end charge. So more crystals you suck up, the less cooldown it has. Reduce the cooldown by 20 seconds. So you could cast it every 10 seconds, essentially. Increase the radius again. Later down the line, the second to last actually makes it so that it can vacuum up plants and rocks. So it's weird that it says that it can vacuum up plants and rocks, because near as I've been able to tell, you can actually vacuum up plants right now, but maybe it's just certain plants, maybe not all of them, I'm not sure. But the point of rocks, I'm assuming it means ore, so you could just literally use the vacuum and pull in all of the ore, and you could use that even in the geode caves as well, which could end up being really, really useful. That said, all the geode resources are here in the delves, and the deeper you are, the higher tiered resources you're gonna get. So you may have noticed, or maybe not, just because you were focused on the combat, I was for the longest time too, that the delve depth that we're actually able to go into because of how strong I am, because of my power level, is instantly tier 5 resources within the geode cave. So it's much faster than going through the geode caves all the way up to tier 5 if I wanted to end up farming for those resources. Now, talking about the inert items as well, the limited amount that you can end up having of these, I don't know how much you can have right off the bat. I think you start with 300. You can buy a 1 wallet, which I already did, and get up to 400. So technically, I could buy this, even save up for the wings if I can end up grinding them. But again, I'm trying to get the developers to end up hooking me up if I can. But in order to end up getting the Bale Light Flyer mount, whatever, it's just a butterfly mount, not my favorite in the game. This one costs 500, so you have to buy this new wallet in order to end up getting this last item. And it's going to cost a coin of Obsidian Delver, and where you get that is actually from the new badges. So the badges themselves, there's going to end up being completing public delves. You only have to complete 50 of them, which is fine. As far as I know, 1 floor equals 1 delve, so that's just doing it 50 times in a public match. That's not bad. Then there's going to be the private ones, which I mentioned previously, and it goes all the way up to 75 of them, so at least it's a more reasonable badge, but still that's quite a bit of delves to end up doing. And then, more interestingly enough, we actually have challenge delves, which are not available on the test server right now. So I'm really curious what these are, because they want you to complete 100 of them in order to end up getting the coin to buy the last wallet. And then you'd be able to store a lot more of the resources. Now, moving on to this over here, you can see you can actually craft a private portal. These are just going to be a temporary item, I guess, again, to prevent people from just constantly opening them and generating new worlds. You can throw it down, have 7 people, and then yourself, so 8 people total, go into the portal, and then there you go, it's going to end up working. The food items right here, which I wouldn't recommend that you eat, you save these. You can end up crafting these with the various items that you get from the delves, and in order, you have to use these in order to craft all the new allies and stuff. And the cool thing is that while these starting allies are not really that great, you'll go further down and further down until finally you get to these ones right here, and these literally are like Raptor Berserker, Chronomancer Cubesley. These are the new strongest allies in the entire game, because they do the exact same effect as the strongest allies do currently, but they also add light value. And having more light means that you'll be stronger for U10, which doesn't really matter too much, but you'll be stronger on Leviathans and in the delves as well, because the enemies in the delves obviously have the light stat value applied to them. Now, another thing too that I noticed is a lot of these allies are actually, you know, they're all based on different biomes. So on the test server, we only have maybe like, I think 3 different caves that we can generate. One is, you know, the bee caves, which generates honey, which is a new resource. It works the same as Terraria, slows you down, gives you health regen, except health regen sucks in this game, so it's pointless. And then there's going to be the dinosaur delve. Later on, like when this goes live, there's going to be a delve based on every biome. I'm guessing it's just going to be a color swap. It doesn't really look like it's that impressive as far as the cave generation is concerned, but I ended up actually getting this little bee ally, bee's nest, whatever, beehive, just from killing bees. So with that as a drop, Obviously it's very rare, but I'm guessing that you can probably get all of these allies as rare drops based on the biome type. So for this one right here, you can see that it's clearly based on Forbidden Spires, just because it's a little jade dragon. So you probably would only get this as a rare drop from the Forbidden Spires rarity of the Delves. And then last but not least, obviously this is going to end up being the biggest thing that people are going to be hyped for. I personally don't really care as much. Crystal 4 is in the game, and you can only get it from the Delves. So yeah, that's the biggest incentive. But again, as far as my feedback is on this test server version of the game right now, the Delves are not really as exciting as they should be. They're really, really cool. I like the direction that they're moving in, and I think that it could be fantastic to have an endless dungeon, because that's essentially all you're doing in Trove anyways. It's just grinding dungeons over and over again. But you see that because the enemies don't really drop anything, and then when you get to the boss room itself, like it takes longer and longer the deeper you go to end up getting loot, and the loot isn't going to end up being worthwhile. The only items that you're essentially grinding out of here is the allies. There's going to be a bunch of new mounts that you can get out of the boss chests, and then there's going to be the Shadow Tower items like Titan Souls and stuff like that, which are not renewable near as I can tell. I have actually already hit my cap for Titan Souls this week in the Delves. And so now anytime I open the Shadow chest that shows up in the Delves later, but you use the new Delve key, right? You'll open that chest up, and normally it gives you Titan Souls. The deeper you go, it gets Lunar Souls and stuff like that, right? So unfortunately, it doesn't seem like those resources are continual. They're still time gated. If they were grindable, I would have liked the Delves a lot better, because then at least it would have one aspect of the game that isn't already available anywhere else. Because the whole thing is that if you break it down, this is just, again, my personal feedback to the Delves. If you break it down into, you know, the dollars and cents of it all, the only real reason you're going to be going in there is for the potential of getting Crystal 4. And even then, that's only for end game people such as myself that want a replacement for Crystal 3 or something like that. And even then, I would only go for like a specific set on like a couple characters. The problem is I would probably never be able to get a Crystal 4 bow unless I'm getting carried, because the Shadow Hunter is useless in the higher difficulty of the Delves, which, you know, is the biggest problem with the game. Is just that all of the classes aren't balanced, so a lot of them become useless at those later tiers when you're trying to end up getting Crystal 4. That said, if you have a good enough group, you can already take on all the Leviathans in the Geode surface, and these are the strongest enemies in the entire game. So technically speaking, Crystal 4 gear is not really required. Obviously, it's going to end up being nice just because it gives you a lot more light value than Crystal 3 gear does. But you know, pick your poison. Is that really worth going into these Delves to the depth that they want you to actually go and testing the RNG? Obviously, I'm just going to keep grinding it because I'm a freak and I just love this game no matter what. But as far as my time is concerned, technically speaking, I think it would probably be more profitable to just go and grind Flux so that you could buy a lot of the items and resources. Obviously, the inert geode items you have to grind yourself, but it's like grinding dungeons just gives you way more gear and Flux and resources, and just it's so much more useful to just be grinding dungeons, despite the fact that the Delves is supposed to be like the infinite dungeon of the game. I would love to see this be the end game where you get so much resources out of the bosses that it's actually worthwhile to do it over a dungeon. And then on top of that, I want to see the higher tiers of rarity in the you know, in the Delves, because I can literally go and do like 1 3-star dungeon in Geode Surface U10, and I'll get way more and way better items than I've gotten out of like hours and hours of going through the Delves. Just because, you know, I'm not expecting to get like Crystal 3 or Crystal 4 right now or anything like that. But the fact of the matter is that I'll spend like 20 minutes to 30 minutes just going through it and getting deeper and deeper. And then I beat a boss and I get like a yellow legendary item. It's like, that's hardly seems worth it if I'm supposed to be in U11 difficulty with a group that is actually strong enough to kill the enemies. So anyways, Consider this a big introduction to the Delve update. I do think that it does have the potential for success. I think that it's an awesome idea in concept. It's just not really executed properly right now because, you know, hypothetically, once you get Crystal 4 and get all of the mounts out of there, there is absolutely no reason to grind the Delves anymore. You're still going to just go to the Geode surface because it's the most efficient way of farming dungeons, and dungeons make the world go round in this game. You use dungeons to farm for your tomes, you use it for your star bar, you use it for just gear and money in general and stuff like that, you know, unless you're just grinding nitro, whatever. Yeah. Thanks for watching though, folks. Hopefully you found this video helpful. It was a little bit longer than I expected, but obviously there is a lot of depth to the Delves. Really bad joke. Smash like, sub for more, buy the merch you want to support the channel, and have yourselves a great day. Sign on and stay epic, gamers.